Hey ho, dear one. I am recording this episode from my brand new office. And if you'd like to see me in my new office, head on over to my new YouTube channel. I've been uploading episodes from Soul Guide Radio with video to YouTube, as well as some of the Thursday Reels I've been uploading onto Instagram, and they are all there at the YouTube channel, and you definitely can subscribe and be up to date on all the videos that I will be adding to that platform, which I'm really excited about. And we'll link that YouTube channel in the show notes. And before we get into today's super amazing content, which is part 1 of a 5-part series, I would love to share a listener review. And this listener review comes from the amazing Sheris Shank. And she says, Soul Guide Radio is joy. And I happen to know Sheris, and I can go ahead and tell you that Sheris is also joy. Allison makes the spiritual life accessible to everyone by making complicated concepts easy to understand. I am always inspired by what she offers and feel uplifted after listening. Love this podcast. Thank you so much, Sheris. And listeners, hey, listen up. Sheris is a gifted hypnotist. So if you've ever been curious about hypnotherapy, we'll go ahead and link in the show notes her website and a way to get in contact with her so you can get to know all the ways that Sheris could support you on your path through hypnotherapy. All right, let us get into today's topic, which is exploring the mother tongue of your intuition. And today, as I mentioned, we're kicking off a 5-part series to deep dive into your many intuitive languages. And learning and expanding your intuitive languages is a key and essential aspect of being able to communicate with higher self, source, and spirit guides at higher and more sophisticated levels. So why don't we go ahead and get right into part 1 of this 5-part series. In today's episode, I reveal how our intuition speaks in senses, not words, the 8 different Clair senses, and how to identify your dominant intuitive language. We'll end on an invitation that will have you getting super fluent in your intuitive mother tongue so you can up-level your overall ability to communicate with your higher self and the divine. So you're going to want to stay with me until the end. Hello, Soul Guide Circle. That is the name of this global and growing community of soul-guided leaders and entrepreneurs. In the Soul Guide Circle, we are using our spiritual gifts to grow prosperous, heart-led businesses that are on the leading edge of consciousness. Find a link to join our closed Facebook group at AllisonScammell.com or in the show notes. Today, we're exploring the mother tongue of your intuition. And some of you have been at this for a while, and you are maybe a student of Soul Blueprint, where we deep dive into how to identify and get fluent in your intuitive languages. Maybe you've been an intuitive for a long time, and this is content that maybe you've been exposed to before. If that's the case, fantastic. You're in the right place, because remember, spiritual growth and expansion is often not about adding new information into your brain or into your system. It's about applying more deeply what you already know. So if you are on the more advanced side, I really invite you to see how you can apply this more deeply. Push the edges of your comfort zone. Really get to know what your dominant intuitive language looks like, and spend some time in what I like to call your gym of intuition, doing reps so that intuitive muscle gets stronger. If you are on the newer side of things, then welcome. You are in the right place, ready to kick off your connection to your intuition to the next level. So with that in mind, It's important to be aware and to remind yourself that our intuition doesn't communicate with us the way you and I communicate to each other. We use verbal language, words, and we use nonverbal cues, facial expressions, hand gestures, etc. We use our ears and our eyes to physically see nonverbal cues and hear the language, hear the communication coming in. Our intuition uses senses. So yes, indeed, we sense a vision, right? But it's not a physical vision, it's a non-physical vision that we see in the mind's eye. Or we sense words, of course, messages coming in, especially if your dominant language is clairaudient. Or we have a sense, we feel what the intuitive message may be. We just have an inner knowing of what the intuitive message may be. And all of these various senses are not something that you see or hear or touch physically. And because of that, the brain will come in and second guess it. Well, I sense that my intuition is saying XYZ, but I'm not sure. I'm second guessing myself. I'm doubting, especially if it's over a big question, a big decision. That's when we tend to get up into our head because we feel like the stakes are high and we need to get it right. So we need to be 100% sure it's our intuition that's actually speaking to us. And when we don't get a clear physical sign and all we're getting are these senses, it's super easy to override the senses, being lost in our thoughts, saying, I'm not sure if this is real. I don't know if this is really my intuition speaking or not. In this 5-part series, we're going to be talking about how to overcome the second guessing and the doubting. And it really starts with getting to know what your dominant intuitive language is so that you can really flex that muscle and really develop a trust relationship to it. That's what we want to do. Develop trust with our mother tongue. That is the language, the intuitive language that comes most naturally and easily for you. So to uncover your dominant intuitive language, let's go through the most common 8 different Clair senses. These are the Clair senses that we use to receive messages from the divine, from the spiritual realm. Now listen, our intuition speaks to us in an infinite number of different ways. So these are just the 8 key ways that we intuitively communicate with the divine. But please know that you could have an intuitive language that actually falls beyond this. But for the purposes of you really getting super fluent in your intuitive languages, I really invite you to choose one of these 8 different Clair senses that you sense is part of your dominant intuitive language, because it is highly likely that you're going to be relying on one or more of these Clair senses. And yes, some of us are bilingual or multilingual, but I would say for most of us, we do have one go-to that edges out the rest. That is in those situations when you're asking the divine a question and you really need an answer, the one that's just going to be coming through most powerfully, most easily, most dominantly, that's the one we're trying to hone in today. So the 8 different Clair senses are first the clairvoyance, and that is using your scent of sight. And this will come to you in your mind's eye as a vision. So if you ask your higher self a question, you get a vision in response to that question. Secondly is clairaudience, and that is the sense of hearing. So you will hear a message coming in, but it won't necessarily sound the way you're hearing me talk right now. It is a sense of hearing. So for some people, it's like hearing your inner monologue, right? Hearing the thoughts inside of your head, except for in this sense, it's not coming from inside of your head. It's coming from your higher self or the divine. So it's coming from on high. And your higher self usually comes to you. You receive the messages from your higher self from your heart, and your intuitive messages come from the heart. And often when it's a spirit guide or even source or other non-physical consciousness, they send an energetic signal to your third eye chakra, that energy that resides between your two eyebrows, and you will sense that communication coming in from your third eye. However, to receive that intuition, you must be embodied. So you must be sunk down in the body, connected to your heart energy at the center of your chest to receive that third eye communication. So the third eye is not necessarily meaning you're up in your head. If you're up in your head, lost in thoughts, you're usually disconnected from that ability to receive those intuitive signals coming in through the third eye. The third clair sense is clairsentience. And I find a lot of my clients have this as a dominant intuitive language, and that is the sense of feeling. You feel an intuitive response. And the thing where people can get flubbed up here is we have a lot of social conditioning telling us not to trust your feelings. Don't rely on your emotions. Be clear-eyed. There's this real conditioning out there that says not to rely on your emotions to make decisions. Don't be emotional. Make rational decisions after a lot of research, right? And indeed, sometimes research is required for us to land on the right decision, but your higher self will point you to the right research. And in the information age, we really need to discern which information we're being called to consume to get us to that right decision. Because certainly with all the choices out there of what you can consume for research, we want to consume the right stuff. And that sense of feeling is you feel intuitively what the answer is. Then we have claircognizant, and that is a sense of knowing. Like the clairsentience, it's easy to second guess. But with this one, you just know. You don't know how you know, but you know that you know. It's an inner knowing that this is the answer, this is where you need to turn, and that is the claircognizance. Then we have the clairgustance, and that's the sense of taste. For all you projectors out there, your not self theme is bitterness, and when you're out of alignment, you will taste bitterness not coming from a food source, but you can also taste the opportunity, right? So it's that sense of taste not coming from food is your sense of taste, intuition. There is also the clairalliance. That is the sense of smell. So smelling a rat, smelling an opportunity, not coming from a physical source. Number 7 is the clairempathy, and that is the sense of emotional feeling. And I should clarify here, the clairsentience is a sense of feeling, but it's really a physical feeling. I feel nausea in my gut, and it's telling me that I shouldn't turn right, I should turn left, for example. Clairempathy is that sense of emotional feelings. But I also feel like clairsentience, when you're dealing with that physical feeling, there's usually an emotional aspect to it. So if you're feeling light and tingly, that usually means you're feeling joyful or exhilarated, and it's a breadcrumb that you're going in the right direction. Clairempathy is a real sense of emotional feelings. I feel shackles on, I feel heavy. Now, heaviness is more clairsentience. You can see how these two are sort of related, but you can notice, and again, if you are more advanced, take it to the next level. If you are high on feelings and you think that the sense of feeling is your dominant intuitive language, is it an emotional feeling or a physical feeling? And definitely you'll be feeling both in both instances, but what comes to you more strongly? That will tell you whether your dominant intuitive language is clairsentience, that's more physical, or clair empathy, which is more emotional. And finally, we get to clairtangency. And this is a fun one just to play around with in general, even if it's not your dominant. And that is the sense of physical touch. So you can hold on to a watch that belonged to your grandfather to see if you can get messages from him if he's crossed over, or from your higher self or source, or from any consciousness that's on your divine support team. And like I said, if you haven't played around with your clairtangency gift, which we all have, even if it's not your dominant, it's a fun thing to do. So grab an object that has significance or that might be calling your name and just ask that object if it has a message for you. And that will be using your clairtangency. And you really want to then, yes, use your physical touch to receive the intuition. And there's two ways to play around with this gift. The first way is, and this is using the actual gift of clairtangency, is to receive the intuitive message from that physical touch. So that physical touch is going to be speaking to you, and you're going to perceive what you receive coming back in response. That is using your senses to receive communications. It's a perception, and you're using the physical touch. I am touching right now some lip gloss. I'm going to ask, this is not a very meaningful thing. Let me get something that's a little bit more meaningful. I have got this coin that has a buffalo on it, and on the back of it, it says, "I am solid." So this was a gift from my kids, and it is meaningful for me. I have it right here on my desk. So I'm going to hold it, and I'm going to ask it a question, and I'm going to use my intuitive gift of physical touch, which is not my dominant, by the way, to receive. I'm going to perceive the message through the touch. That's using, it's not holding the object itself. It's using physical touch to perceive the message. That's one way to do it. A second way to do it is to hold the object and then use one of the other clair senses to receive. So when I say clairtangency is about holding an object or tuning in energetically, you don't have to physically touch it, to an object. It really is the perception, the sense of physical touch is where you receive the message. So if I receive a message from this coin, from my touch, which I don't use as often, so this is a good way to stretch your intuition, which is a good way to boost your overall intuition. So I recommend you play around as well. I receive. It's an important time to focus on your grounding. And this message is for all of us. So if you don't already have a grounding practice, I invite you to start one. And if you do have a grounding practice, I invite you to refortify it or expand it. Because as we ascend to higher consciousness, it doesn't mean we float away. We have to be grounded and have a stable platform as we grow spiritually and energetically. Okay, so that is just a message that came through that wasn't necessarily about intuition, but it is, because developing a more sophisticated intuition is really about making sure you feel grounded. As you communicate to the divine, you have a grounded, solid platform underneath you so that you can reach higher and higher and higher frequencies in the non-physical realm. And as I received that message, okay, my dominant is clairaudient. So that's why I'm a really gifted channel. I get messages. I hear. So yes, it's hard for me to turn that off. And you will find the more sophisticated you get with your dominant intuitive language, it's really hard to turn it off, and you really shouldn't. I was trying to really receive from my physical touch just to convey this point and to practice around with it, but I actually was. I was going into a bilingual receiving here, where I was receiving the message from that physical connection, my physical touch on this coin, as well as my clairaudient. So you will find that you will often dip into receiving messages from the divine in a bilingual and trilingual and multilingual way using several of the different Clair senses. So lastly, let's get into the important question of how to identify your dominant intuitive language. And if you already know your dominant intuitive language, see if you can get to know it at a more sophisticated level. All right, so the first thing you want to do is take some deep belly breaths, because whenever we connect to our intuition, we have to get out of the thinking mind. We have to get out of the left brain and into the right, although we're not in the brain, we're in the body. You are sinking down from the neck down is where we access our intuition and we get embodied. And you do that simply by taking deep belly breaths, filling up the lower part of the belly and embodying, feeling your big toes, feeling the tips of your fingers, feeling your sits bones as it connects to wherever you're sitting, or if you're standing, feeling your heels connecting in to the ground beneath you. And you just want to sink into the body. This is where we access our intuition. This is where we access all of our gifts. It's sunk down in. It's not up in the head. You want to go out of your mind and into the body. And with each deep belly breath, just invite yourself to sink deeper and deeper in. It's like you're going on a trip within yourself. You're going in, not out. Usually when we're in our thoughts, we're thinking outwards. We're lost in the past or ruminating about the future. But we're not in the present moment. And accessing the intuition is in the now. The only moment in time there ever is this moment, this second, this now. You're in the now. You're in your body. And then you connect to your heart space at the center of your chest. Allow your heart to become your center point of awareness. Now, some of you may have a strong gut access to your intuition. So you get strong gut responses. That gut knowing. You may also want to connect to that as well. But always start with the heart space. And then you want to move to asking questions. Asking questions kicks off a co-creative process with the divine. Every time you kick off a question, the divine hops into action to get you the answers. And the answers arrive to you in what you perceive. It is a perception. And you're receiving what you're perceiving. So you ask the question, what is my dominant intuitive language? And then you move to perceiving what you're receiving, and notice not only what you perceive, but how it arrives to you. So if you get a vision of clairvoyance, and the vision says, or it's somehow indicating clairvoyance, that is highly likely that it is clairvoyance. So notice the medium it arrives to you is also pointing you to your dominant intuitive language. I mean, as I do it, I so hearily clear, clairaudient. It comes in through my sense of hearing, clairaudient. I can practice with my other senses, and I can practice with my voyance, and I can see when I do that, I get a vision of an ear. I can practice. I'm also very, very high on claircognizant. I would say I'm almost bilingual, or that I am bilingual, although my clairaudient edges out my cognizant. But what happens is they work in tandem, and you might find that your languages also work in tandem. So that in my example, I get the message that comes in, and sometimes the message is like, oh, I don't know what that means, We ride at midnight. Okay, well, who rides? Where are we riding to? What are we riding, right? You get a cryptic message, and then you're thinking, well, what does that mean? Then often your second language will kick in to tell you what it means. So in my case, what often happens is I get the message clairaudiently, and then my claircognizance, my inner knowing, kicks in to tell me exactly what the message means for me or for my client. And I invite you to also notice as you go through this process if you have a second language coming in. And your second language is either one of your dominant intuitive languages, or it could be your developing intuitive language. And this is the language that you're learning in the same way you would learn a foreign language. And this is going to be the topic of exploration for part 2 of this 5-part series. So if you're not subscribed to this podcast, go ahead and hit subscribe wherever it is you listen so you don't miss a single episode, because this 5-part series is going to get really, really, really good. So let's do a quick recap. Our intuitive languages speak to us through our senses. We all have a dominant intuitive language, which is like our mother tongue. It is the intuitive way of communication or sense that comes most naturally and most easily. You can decipher what your dominant intuitive language is by 1, taking deep breaths, 2, sinking into the body, connecting to the heart space, 3, setting the intention, connect to your higher self, 4, asking the question, what is my dominant intuitive language? And 5, perceiving what you're receiving to be, which intuitive language, and noticing how you received it. My invitation this week is to spend some time playing around with your dominant intuitive language. If you are at the beginning of your journey, see if you can name it and see if you can start noticing how it shows up in your life. If you've been at this for a while, this is how you advance. It's not me cramming a bunch of new information about your dominant intuitive language into your brain. It's about your practice with it and living deeper and deeper and deeper into your potential with this language. So see if you can push your edges. What are you being called to notice or do or be with your dominant intuitive language? Set the intention that you would like to take your relationship with your dominant intuitive language to the next advanced level. And speaking of which, if you would like my help in taking all of your intuitive languages and all of your spiritual gifts to the next advanced level, then I invite you to check out my signature certification program, Soul Blueprint, where we go through and activate and amplify your 5 spiritual gifts: intuition, healing, manifestation, teaching, and leadership. And I show you how to bring those gifts together to create a powerful energetic alignment process that has you stepping into the role of the conscious creator of your experience. Soul Blueprint will enable you to become a better coach, a better healer, and earn more income and become a real recognized authority in your field. If you would like to learn more about the next cohort, head over to the show notes where there will be a link, and you can always find it at AllisonScammell.com/Soul Blueprint. That is a wrap for this week. I look forward to being back in your earbuds next week with part 2 of our 5-part series. And as always, until next time, may your soul guide the way.